Whole civilizations once trembled at the sound of my name.
And yeah, welcome, actual justice warrior.
What's up guys, Sean here, and today we're going to talk about Cenk Uyghur's nephew proving exactly what I've been saying all along, that the man is virtually unemployable in any media company across the country, except for the media company that his uncle happened to found. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you guys so much for the nice birthday wishes. Thank you to the people who donated to me via PayPal or Venmo. I really appreciate it. It was really nice, and you guys didn't have to do that. It's my birthday, not that special. For those of you who are on the Twitterverse, or for those of you who read conservative news outlet publications, or for those of you who watch Fox News and other conservative media, may have learned that a couple of videos where Cenk Uyghur's nephew is saying some pretty terrible things have been circulating all around the internet ever since August 21st. Now, I saw the first video in question posted by Keemstar's Twitter handle, where Cenk Uyghur's nephew thought it was a good idea to say on a live stream that America deserved the 9/11 attacks.
America deserved 9/11, dude. Fuck it. I'm saying it.
We're there to partner with them. We're not there doing our own thing. We're there partnering and training
in a video
and
game.
Equipping.
Now that's a take that one can have on a terrorist attack that killed 3,000 Americans, and because of this video, a lot of people started getting really angry at Cenk's nephew. But more importantly than that, somebody so smart and so clever decided that they should look for the full clip and look for the full context. And unfortunately, this somebody, who again is incredibly clever and incredibly smart, couldn't find the full clip and or the full context because Cenk Uyghur's nephew had deleted the original stream where the first clip took place. However, this ingenious person, who is in fact me, yes, I am complimenting myself, found another clip where Cenk Uyghur's nephew decided it was acceptable to insult Dan Crenshaw, not for his political positions, but insult him for his war injury, and called the person who gave Dan Crenshaw his war injury a brave Mujahideen soldier. Cenk's nephew called the man who took Dan Crenshaw's eye a brave soldier. This is what happens when you're gifted a job by your uncle you know you didn't earn, and it eats away at your mental state.
Soft power is the exact same as hard power. Soft power, embassies, diplomacy, exact same thing as military bases. I can't do this. I can't do this. Guy has the understanding of foreign policy of like a 12-year-old. What the What the is wrong with this dude? Didn't he go to war and like literally lose his eye because some Mujahideen, a brave soldier, fucked his eye hole with their dick? Isn't that how he lost his dumbass eye? Because he got his eye hole fucked? By a brave soldier?
Now, after posting that clip on Twitter, needless to say, by the 1.6 million views that it ended up getting within the next 24 hours, things started to get a little bit bad for Cenk Uyghur's nephew. You see, in the United States of America, we tend to frown upon people who specifically insult the injuries of war veterans, and Cenk's nephew in the video in question appeared to not only insult Dan Crenshaw's war injury, but he appeared to cheer on his war injury. So due to the fact that I unearthed, clipped, and then posted this video on Twitter for the world to see, Cenk's nephew and the Young Turks started getting a lot of heat, and Cenk Uyghur decided that he was going to have a discussion with his nephew on air about what he called his offensive comments. Funny little anecdote, when I saw Cenk Uyghur announce that he was going to have a conversation with his nephew on air about what he called his offensive comments, I posted this drinking game, and one of the things I included in the drinking game as an excuse for Cenk Uyghur's nephew's attack on Dan Crenshaw's war injury was that they were probably going to bring up John McCain. And like clockwork, as if I was bestowed the wisdom by God himself, 30 minutes later, Cenk Uyghur's nephew on Twitter decided to defend himself by pointing out that Orange Man insulted John McCain, so why are people so upset that I insulted Dan Crenshaw? Sometimes these people are so predictable, it's ridiculous. However, one of the things I did find out through that Twitter thread is that unlike the apology that clearly was warranted to Dan Crenshaw in particular, Cenk Uyghur's nephew planned to double down on his comments about Crenshaw. And that's exactly what he did in this conversation clip. And it is glorious to watch.
Joining me now is Hassan Piker. He is part of the TYT network. He does Breakdown and now a new show, Agitprop. Hassan, welcome. And listen, you're on because you said some things that a lot of people, including myself, find very offensive. You did not say it on the Young Turks network. You said it on your own Twitch channel.
Why are you getting upset at me? Nothing I'm saying is controversial, implying that I didn't even understand immediately why what I was saying was so outside of the bounds of reason, considering that Hillary Clinton has had a similar and correct opinion on this, talking about how we did fund Al-Qaeda and Noam Chomsky and numerous other academics on both sides of the political spectrum.
So when you're talking about one of the causes of 9/11 being American foreign policy, it's not just Chomsky. Donald Trump has said.
Donald Trump has said that as well.
I understand that. I understand that. But you understand now, and not just now, but you understood fairly soon after you said it, that saying Americans deserve 9/11 is a completely different statement and one that's wrong.
Now I want to point out something for you guys to watch out for while we're watching this clip, and that is how uncomfortable Cenk Uyghur is with how ridiculous his nephew is being. Because you can tell by his face and his body language that he's kind of stunned with how ridiculously dumb Cenk Uygur's nephew's answers are throughout this entire segment. And as somebody who's actually running a business, it is stunning to look at somebody who is an employee at that business, who is only employed at that business because he is in fact your nephew, have complete and total disregard for your business. Like, they could end up losing sponsors over this statement. But this should surprise nobody because Cenk's nephew is a communist. He doesn't know anything about running a business. In fact, he's in favor of democratizing the workplace, which means that he is so entitled that he not only thinks that he deserves a job that was handed to him by his uncle because the man handing him the job was his uncle, but he thinks that that doesn't go far enough and that Cenk Uyghur, the man who handed him the job, is ripping him off by not making him part owner of a company that he had no hand in building.
You said America deserved 9/11. Did you mean that?
No, obviously not, especially considering the fact that while that is a very viral quote that is going around currently, if those people were at least even remotely charitable or cared about the actual truth of what I was talking about, they would understand that within context.
So Cenk's nephew's claim around the 9/11 comments is that he was in fact taken out of context, which is a pretty weak claim to make when you in fact deleted the entirety of the stream, aka deleting all of the context, because you knew what you said was not going to look good in any context.
I know that I was inappropriate. I understand that, which is precisely why I took action immediately. As soon as I realized, like, oh, this is going to be misconstrued. I don't want this to be weaponized. I don't want this to be. I don't want this to offend people. I immediately stopped the stream. I deleted the VOD, the video on demand, and I continued after that to.
So you deleted it before any right-winger wrote an article about it or not?
Of course.
In fact, even Cenk Uyghur, who is clearly trying to provide cover for his nephew. In fact, he made his nephew dress up in big boy clothes before coming on this interview. It's like, dude, come on. You know what you said was not right. It was not appropriate to say that the United States deserves 9/11. And Cenk's nephew's retort to this is so amazing, so weak, so cowardly, and ridiculously laughable that I just have to play it for you so that you guys can hear it.
But you understood fairly soon after you said it that saying Americans deserve 9/11 is a completely different statement and one that's wrong.
No, I didn't say Americans deserve 9/11. I said America deserves 9/11.
Right, but that's
and
still
in that
wrong.
Moment, well, maybe you can chalk it up to English being my second language or whatever you want to chalk it up to. Well, maybe you can chalk it up to English being my second language or whatever you want to chalk it up to.
That's right. Cenk's nephew, who speaks perfect English, by the way, except for the occasional mispronounced word, which could be more attributed to reading a word rather than hearing how a word is pronounced and then imitating the actual pronunciation, is going with the defense that English is not his first language. Cenk's nephew, who mercilessly attacked PewDiePie for saying the N-word in a heated moment on stream, despite the fact that PewDiePie's first language is not English, and the fact that PewDiePie never lived in the United States of America, so the N-word doesn't have the same context coming from somebody from Sweden that it would have coming from somebody from the United States. And what's even more ridiculous than that is that Cenk's nephew is talking to his uncle who was born in Turkey. His uncle whose first language was not English. His uncle's first language, like Cenk's nephew's first language, I presume, is Turkish. So he's using the English isn't my first language line of defense for saying something that's indefensible against a guy who English isn't his first language either. And in fact, they both share the same first language because they're related. Because I don't know if you guys know this, Cenk's nephew is in fact Cenk Uyghur's nephew. But it gets better than that, kids. Stay tuned.
All right, so now let's turn to the comments you made about Dan Crenshaw.
Yes.
So, you know, I guess in an attempt at satire, made very crass comments about the eye that he lost in Afghanistan.
So they move on to the Crenshaw comments, and you guys know from watching my videos that I don't like to swear in my videos, and I don't like to play videos that have swear words, but it is shameful that the Young Turks, when addressing these comments specifically, don't have the integrity to at least post a redacted, censored text version of what Cenk's nephew actually said. Because they know if they show any of the video clips, censored or uncensored, if they show any text, censored or uncensored, then what Cenk's nephew said is completely indefensible.
But in regards to an incredibly crass and offensive joke you made, he's handled it like a champ.
I agree. I think he took it like a champ. I would not have expected that, considering, like I said, the overwhelming amount of commentary that I've received so far on the issue is just very public displays of trying to kill me and fantasizing about murdering me or whatever, which is fine. It's a part of the job.
So because there are no clips and they're not showing any of the quotes, they're not actually addressing the things that Cenk's nephew said about Dan Crenshaw's eye injury. So because they're not addressing the comments, Cenk basically is allowing his nephew to try and reframe the issue to a discussion about policy, as if the issue that people have with Cenk's nephew is that they disagree with him on foreign policy.
If I considered what the popular thing to say was going to be every time I said something, I probably wouldn't be advocating for the things I believe in. The final note I will say is this. Okay, I would rather be uncivil and advocate for the morally righteous cause, which is anti-war and anti-imperialism, bringing our troops back home, ending the unjustifiable and unnecessary bloodshed, than be incredibly polite and incredibly civil and talk about ongoing genocide and refuse to acknowledge it, and even worse than that, vote in favor of the government, in favor of the country that is continuing that genocide with our weapons.
Now, as the person who clipped this originally, and as somebody who is way more non-interventionist than Dan Crenshaw is, I'm telling you, the reason that this was clipped was not because I didn't like that Cenk's nephew was destroying Dan Crenshaw on foreign policy. You're not arguing foreign policy when you call the person who planted an IED a brave soldier, and then say that he effed Dan Crenshaw in the eye with his D. You're mocking someone and celebrating the fact that they have a war injury. And considering that Cenk's nephew promotes himself and he promotes his brand as somebody who is defending the marginalized groups, it's amazing that without any hesitation, he's insulting a man who has a literal disability, a disability that he got from fighting in a US war, solely because he disagrees with his positions on foreign policy. So of course, after seeing this, people are going to point out that he is a total and complete hypocrite, and that his sense of moral superiority is completely unearned, just like everything else in his life.
Okay. Service does not guarantee respect. It should not. I'm sorry. This is the exact same kind of this is the exact same kind of sentiment that leads to the militant attitude that the United States has. If you have served, and then on top of that, are using that service to continue sending like loads of young men and women overseas to die or to come back home and fail to reintegrate into society, just exclusively for the profits of the military-industrial complex, then no, you don't deserve respect by virtue of service.
Which brings us to Cenk's nephew's completely idiotic final point and defense of his comments. And that is that Dan Crenshaw's veteran status doesn't matter as long as he disagrees with the radical left on foreign policy. Which is basically the basis of all this leftism and all this identity politics that people like Cenk's nephew and the Young Turks as a whole push. They don't actually care about sexuality. They don't care about quote-unquote marginalized people. They don't care about your race. They don't care about your veteran status. They don't care about your gender identity. All that is just a mechanism to attack their political opponents. And as soon as you step out of line with their political beliefs, you're not useful to them and they disregard you. They think that you're worthless. Cenk's nephew here is saying the quiet part out loud. So anytime, and I mean absolutely anytime, somebody like Cenk's nephew says, oh, well, we have to defer to a woman of color on this topic, or we have to defer to somebody in the LGBT community, or we have to defer to somebody who's disabled. That's all nonsense. They're only deferring to that person because they think that that person will have more emotional appeal pushing their horrific agenda. They don't care about that person. They don't care about those groups. All they care about is their agenda, and the people they use to promote that agenda are in fact their props.
Okay. Service does not guarantee respect. It should not. I'm sorry.
You can hear it clearly for yourself. Service only matters if you come to the same conclusions that Cenk's nephew has come to. If you don't come to those same conclusions, you can be mocked for your disability, you can be mocked for your service. He'll even call the person that wounded you brave, despite the fact that you were wounded by an IED, and planting an IED is one of the most cowardly things that you could possibly do. So while a lot of people are calling for Cenk's nephew to be fired, I want to make it 100% clear that I am not one of those people. Because Cenk's nephew is the perfect example of why a millennial would think communism is a good idea. He doesn't know anything, and he's really motivated by the fact that he's never earned anything in his life. So he feels like if he didn't earn it, nobody else earned it. And like all of the radical and identitarian left, he is fundamentally anti-American, and he has absolutely no principles, and any statement of principle that he's ever made has only been to advance his own agenda, because as soon as those principles become inconvenient, he'll jettison them and break all of the rules that he'll condemn somebody else for doing.
To me, that's monumentally important that you misspoke and that you did not mean that. If you meant it, it would be a totally different conversation. Well, you pulled a video immediately showing, in my opinion, that you didn't mean it. Okay, but
and by the way, earlier in the video, Cenk said that his nephew deleting the video with the 9/11 comments was an acknowledgement that his nephew knew that the 9/11 comments were wrong. And if that's the case, I just want to point out that the stream where he insults Dan Crenshaw is still up right now with that segment in it. It starts at about 3:05 and it runs to about 4:10. If you guys want to watch it, it will be linked in the description box down below. But download it quickly because it will probably be taken down after I've pointed out that it is still in fact up. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via one-time donation on PayPal or Venmo, or you can support me monthly on Patreon or Subscribestar. This has been me talking about Cenk's nephew, showing you exactly what kind of person he is. Till next time.